The Jenks Board Adjustment made 2022. Could I get a roll call, please?
Patel?
Here.
Foley?
Here.
Pittman?
Here.
Wilson?
Here. Present. I'd like to begin by saying we do have at least one item on the agenda that I believe most, if not everybody, is here to speak on. Everybody who's interested in speaking will have a chance. We do have an agenda. When this comes up, we will introduce the item. Our staff here will give a presentation, a staff report. We do give an opportunity for the applicant to get up and give a presentation. During the public hearing, those who have signed up, you'll have an opportunity to speak. We'll call your name. When you get up, we ask that you give your name and address. Please try to limit your presentation to about 3 to 5 minutes in respect of everybody's time. And then we will have another chance for the applicant to get up and respond to any questions or comments that were raised during the public hearing. At the conclusion of the public hearing, we will close the public hearing, and then it will be the board's deliberation. Hopefully that answered the question that we had. Everybody will get a chance to speak.
So I think when you mentioned.
Could you please come to the podium and give your name and address?
Hi, I'm Lisa Turner with the Art Oklahoma. I just wanted, you mentioned earlier that if you wanted to speak to sign in, but I think everyone understood that that was just a sign-in sheet that we're here. So just to save us time later, I don't know that everyone that signed on there wants to speak. So just didn't want to waste anyone's time if they don't want to speak.
Thank you. Yes, we will call your name if you signed up, and if you do not want to speak, just say, we're okay. And likewise, if you didn't get a chance to sign in, we will still have opportunity for everybody to say what they would like to say. With that, the next item on the agenda, item number 3, is business. Number 1, approve the minutes of regular meeting of October 14, 2022. 2021. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes? If so, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Patel?
Yes.
Foley?
Yes.
Pittman?
I wasn't present, so I'll abstain.
Wilson?
Abstain.
Yes. Okay, the next item, item number 2, JBOA 22-445, request by Jeanette O'Hara for approval of a special exception to allow for a respite care house, general location 921 North Ivy Place. Does staff have a?
Yes, thank you, Chair, Inyard, and Board of Adjustment members. This application was brought to the City of Jenks some time ago. We really had a hard time narrowing down how to categorize it and move it forward. A respite care home is not generally found as a rule of thumb in the state of Oklahoma, and certainly we have never approved anything like it in the City of Jenks. So in talking with the city attorney and talking internally with other staff, and I think at some point I may have reached out to some of you as well, we felt like the best way to move forward that would allow the board to have a legal path forward, but also give the neighborhood an opportunity to voice their concerns was through this special exception process. It is the opinion of staff that this is closer to a child nursery than any other use that we have in our zoning. And we did just update the zoning code, again, having never heard of a respite care I've been a caregiver for 2.5 years, but I've never heard of anything like this. So, the criteria listed in the staff report, the first thing that it talks about is a respite care definition. And I took this from New York because Ms. O'Hara had said that she was trying to model her, business and childcare similar to that. And so you can read that if you are interested. Then I just went through the general planning data in the staff report. Then I went through some of the questions and some of the details. One of the things that I would like to clarify, under supplemental information, I used the information from the zoning code, and then at the end of the staff report, I have the information from the Unified Development Ordinance. So until April 4th, 2022, just a few weeks ago, we were ruled by the old zoning code. And on effective April 5th, I believe, the Unified Development Ordinance was adopted. And in speaking with the city attorney, whatever decision is made, and you all are aware of this, but I'm gonna say it in case some of the public did not understand or may ask the question, whatever decision you make needs to meet the criteria of a special exception for a child care nursery under the Unified Development Ordinance. So that would be found on at the end of page 7 of 8 of the staff report, and page 8 of 8 of the staff report. So that being said, in order to receive a special exception in the Unified Development Ordinance, it says the Board of Adjustment upon application and after notice in public hearing may grant a special exception only upon finding that the application will be in harmony with the spirit of the UDO and the governing zoning district, will not be injurious to the neighborhood, or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. So that's the two primary criteria when thinking through the different steps of a child care nursery. I will read you the definition of a child care in the UDO, a service that provides for the care, health, safety, supervision, or guidance of a child's social, emotional, and educational growth on a regular basis. And then a home-based child care, the conditions of approval include that it must receive a special exception. The primary use of the lot shall be residential in nature. No person other than the resident of the dwelling unit shall be engaged or employed in a house-based child care on the premises. No additional signed area beyond what is permitted in the residential districts shall be granted to a home-based child care, and no alteration of the residential appearance of the premises shall occur, including the creation of a separate entrance for the home-based child care. Another note, we have given out 9 home-based that I found right off the bat, home-based businesses in the city of Jenks, several in the last couple of years, and the most recent being a home-based child care, which was, I think, north of 121st Street and maybe it was 91st. Okay, north of Main and east of 75. I don't know. I know we did one, that's about it, I guess, so, and it was recent. So with that being said, I don't have any more to add. If you have any questions for me, I'll try to answer them. The applicant, I believe, is present if you have questions.
Did staff have a recommendation?
Yes, staff has looked over it, has talked to the applicant, I have made contact with each of you trying to explain the criteria that is established in the Unified Development Ordinance. And based on my interpretation in conjunction with the city attorney, I do recommend approval.
Question to clarify. Thank you for your staff report. I've gone through it, all the information that you put together, very professionally done. I do hope to get a little clarification on what we are categorizing this particular use to be. I know a number of terms have been tossed around a bit, but I see that you're setting this up to be approved as a special exception for a home-based childcare. And that is as provided in the new Jenks BOA Meeting.
Yes, Chair, and that is correct. It was the closest category that we could find, and since she primarily deals with children, I do think that you'll hear more from her on the ages, but it most closely fits to a childcare, home-based childcare.
And one other follow-up question, to the extent we find it does not fit squarely within one of these specific special exceptions, what other avenues or what do we do with that?
Sure.
If there's not a specific codified term that it fits squarely within, because I know we're dealing with a little bit of a different circumstance.
Sure. So if you were going through the list on page 8 and you felt like it didn't 100% meet or it was not close enough, the next step would be you can recommend approval with the condition of a variance for that particular. So let's just say if a ruling or one of the conditions in the UDO said no flowers in the front yard, and you felt like she should have flowers in the front yard, then she could you could say yes to the special exception, but you have to be granted a variance on the flowers in the front yard.
And the variance can be done unilaterally by this board, it does not need to be done by the applicant separately.
That's a good question. The city, I believe, let me look it up, and I'll get back with you before this is over, and if not, I may not be able to answer it tonight. I've never had an application for any type of board of adjustment that came from anyone but an applicant. I don't think the city can make applications.
And I think my question is more so if it doesn't fit squarely within 1 through 5, do we as the board have the authority to grant the exception with the variance despite the applicant not having that variance in the initial application?
Per the code, a variance requires a public notice for a variance, and since we did not advertise for a variance to any of those specific details, then they would have to come back for a second hearing.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to, I'll open the public hearing and give the applicant an opportunity to get up and give a presentation. We ask that it be limited to approximately 10 minutes.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for hearing our case tonight. My name is Jeanette O'Hara, and I am the founder of Will's House. I'm a Jenks resident and a member of the Jenks Chamber of Commerce. I am a career physical therapist and the mother of 5 boys. Will's House is named for my oldest son, William, who passed away in 2017. 2 of my other sons also have special health care needs. My experience as a healthcare provider and as a mother that is a full-time caregiver led me to start Will's House. We founded Will's House in 2020 as a 501c3 nonprofit organization to provide medical needs childcare and respite care. In Oklahoma, there is a major lack of respite service providers. For Tolson's, if a family does not have a family member or provider that can meet their child's need, their only other option for overnight care would be J.B. McCarty Center in Norman, Oklahoma. For young adults, there are even less options for overnight care. While it is challenging to introduce a new model or idea in any area of business, the world of respite care is in desperate need of a local, safe option to relieve full-time caregivers. I want to clearly state that we are not a business that is trying to insert ourselves into an established neighborhood where we do not belong. We offer a community service that should exist in every community to serve families who are full-time caregivers of children with disabilities. Our model is intentional about offering a local home away from home that is not a hospital or a facility several hours away. Our model is intentional about listening to the specific needs of the family and customizing our care to meet that need. We offer our services free of charge to families. We have chosen to utilize a house within our community to demonstrate to our neighbors living with disability that they are seen, supported, and included. The Jenks School District is well known and sought after in Oklahoma for its special education program, and we have established many relationships with the family in our community who are already using our services. Wills House follows the National Respite Network standards for respite care and the Oklahoma DHS policies and procedures for childcare. If we are granted this special exception, Jenks will be the first in Oklahoma to provide community home model of respite services for children and young adults. We are here to ask for special zoning to utilize the home at 921 North Ivy Place. We have been providing medical needs childcare for almost 2 years in clients' homes and in my personal residence, which is also in Jenks. We have met over 250 needs, and we are confident, based on the services that we've already provided, that our services do not disrupt a neighborhood. We have no history of being disruptive, causing traffic complaints or noise complaints of any type in my residence in Jenks. We will be continuing to serve clients in their homes or utilizing the house on North Ivy Place. Our plans for organizational growth would involve taking on new properties and copying our community respite model, not increasing the number of people using the home on North Ivy Place. Our business does not run a full-time daycare. We do not have residents. We will not utilize buses or vans. We will not be building anything on the property. We do not plan to host events at this property. My family will continue to live in our current residence, not at the house on North Ivy Place. I would like to present a couple of examples of how our organization works to demonstrate how the home would be used. A parent, grandparent, or guardian calls Wills House and says they need help caring for their child or young adult. We assess the specific needs of the child or children and the length of time or days that the family is requesting help. We talk with the parent about whether the need would be best met in their personal home or away from home, and then we meet the need if it's within our availability. Some examples are, a foster parent is considering taking placement of a 6-month-old with a feeding tube. She knows it will be difficult to find childcare, but will say yes to accepting the placement if the child can be watched by Wills House from 9 to 2 for the next 3 days. This would be easy for us to achieve and allows the child with medical needs to be placed. The second one, a mother calls to ask if I can help watch her son, who is 24 years old and cannot physically sit up in his wheelchair long enough to attend his brother's graduation. His parents both want to attend the graduation, so Wills House covers that need at his own residence so they can go. I would learn the client's care and the family's needs, and now if that family needs to travel or needs help with their son quickly, he can utilize the Wills House or stay in his own house to have care provided. Number 3, a grandmother is raising her 7-year-old grandson who has disabilities. She is in poor health and has been recently hospitalized. She was terrified the last time she was hospitalized because she had to leave her grandson with a relative that did not have a good understanding of his disability and needs. She calls Wills House and would like to get to know the caregivers so that if this happens again, he will have a place to go locally that is safe, familiar, and skilled. And the last one, I wrote this before this actually happened again today. A mother calls me to tell me that she is at the end of her rope. She cannot relax at her home because her child has been crying or screaming for days and the doctors have not been able to figure out why. She comes to the Wills House to talk, cry, vent, or just sit in a quiet house. Intermittent breaks from full-time caregiving have an incredible impact on the mental health and quality of life for a family unit living with disability. Wills House can provide a space for that need. Wills House has met needs to cover date nights, honeymoons, sibling sports travel, counseling, medical appointments, hospitalizations, parent-teacher conferences, etc. We assess each need and meet as many as we can. Anyone who knows me knows that I will continue to say yes to these families and the needs that they have. But being able to utilize an additional space at the property on North Ivy will just help us do it better, with the goal of building long-term relationships with families in our community and normalizing breaks for caregivers. We were seeking a quiet and safe neighborhood to serve our families in, and we felt like we found that at 921 North Ivy Place. We are open to communication, compromises, discussions, solutions to potential concerns. We are hopeful that we can hear the concerns of the Jenks community and come to a satisfactory arrangement for all parties. Thank you so much for your time.
Next part of our public hearing, I will call the names of those who signed up to speak. And if you would please come to the podium and give your name and address, Try to limit it to about 3 to 5 minutes. If somebody before you has happened to say the same thing, we do suggest you don't repeat in the interest of it, in respect to the time of everybody here. First thing on the list, Ann Allen.
Can we do trade places? I'll go before her. Mine is the second.
Okay. Diana, yes?
Yes.
Thank you, good evening. I live at 923 North Ivy Place, and this is right next door to the proposed daycare center. My bedroom is less than 30 feet from their driveway, and I do wake up every time they come and go. And the cleaning thing, well, that's a one-time thing, but the coming and going. Now, let me say this, I think it's kind of based on who's nice and who's not nice. I have worked with crippled people in Africa. I'm from Arizona. I've worked with disabled. That's what I do. I'm a missionary. I right now have a lot more history, but I'm the executive director of Neighbor for Neighbor, and I take care of handicapped people, elderly, the poor, the needy, all day. Have done that at that location for over 18 years. So it's not that I don't know what's necessary and what happens, especially with handicapped children. And sometimes when they're not in the right place or they've been pressured or when a parent has to leave them somewhere, sometimes you get a lot of disruption. This just goes with the case. I feel for them greatly. I just feel strongly that this needs to be in a different area, not next door to my bedroom. Kind of crazy, but I don't think I can handle it. I just don't. Like I said, I work with these people all day long. My people that are sick, hungry. We give food, we give medical, we give legal, everything that a person would need that's disadvantaged. And take care of and giving guardianships for people that are handicapped and have no other way to go. So it's not because I don't understand or because my heart's not there. It's been there my whole life. That's what I've done. That's all I've done my whole life is volunteer at the church and everything else, and that's my life. But I need a place to go and sleep and have peace. And as far as children, I have 5 grandchildren, and I have 6 great-grandchildren with 1 on the way. So I love children, and part of them have been handicapped severely. And my son was too. So I know that, and I know the need for it. I just don't feel that having 24/7 people going and different needs, and it's just part of it. It is part of it. It's tragic. It really is. But I just don't think it would be fair to have that type of business or that type of coming and going right by my bedroom. Thank you.
Well, no, I don't live in Jenks. Diana asked me to come read her notes because she was hoarse earlier today. So I don't know if you want her to try to read it or if you want me to read it for her on her behalf. And Alan.
It's a good.
Okay. Summary, the Respite House will not maintain the integrity of my neighborhood. The first covenant of our neighborhood specifically prohibits businesses, so our quiet family residences will not be constantly disrupted with all the issues that I will bring to you today. This application for respite business in our quiet single-family neighborhood should not pass because it causes increased safety hazards, increased safety hazards, traffic hazards, parking hazards, increased emergency vehicles, increased wear and tear on the streets, increased noise factors, increased probability of ongoing disturbances, disturbing the peace and public nuisances, and a possible devaluation of the property values. This application for respite business in a quiet single-family neighborhood should not pass because there has been no economic impact study, no waste impact study, no clear description of the business other than open 24 hours a day for all 7 days a week for children and adults who need constant care. This vague interpretation of types and of clients and numbers of clients in any one day no difference to the neighbor's needs have been stated to my knowledge. This is a business where owners and employees make an income. It is a business. It's a business of the heart, but it is a business. Expanded reasons to not approve this application in any form. The integrity of the neighborhood. On its own merit, there's no way having a business of a respite house fits the integrity of our neighborhood. There is a reason this neighborhood is designated as a single-family residence and specifically did not include an ongoing business operation open all day, every day, and night. Homeowners invested in this street because it was a quiet, single-family neighborhood. The respite care is not a few preschoolers coming a few hours a day. It's for an ever-changing and unspecified number of adults or children that will be given permission to come at all hours of the day and night, 24/7. Hours of emergency service are possible. Even if nights are by appointment only, it still opens to emergencies. No aspects of this business maintains the integrity of the neighborhood. Respite house, the term respite house means planned and for emergency care provided to a child or adult with special needs in order to provide temporary relief to the family caregiver of that child or adult. The 24/7 business venture with broad types of clientele plus inclusion of emergency care does not maintain the integrity of my neighborhood. There's a possible public nuisance. Using common sense tells you that the business in our neighborhood creates a public nuisance and disrupts the neighbor's right to enjoy his or her property without interference. Disruption of quiet enjoyment and public nuisance may constitute a legal action. Breach of quiet and the legal action could be the breach of quiet enjoyment and public nuisance. By nature of this business, there will be upset parents and caregivers needing the respite from their child or adult patient driving up and down the street at all hours of the day and night. There could be. There will be increased traffic, increased parking, driving hazards, wear and tear on the streets, increased noise from cars and added people. This will become a business artery, not a street for the residents. There is an increased probability of emergency vehicles needed for these complex and difficult clients that often need extensive help and may often have the increased propensity to disturbing the peace. Vehicles will be coming and going day and night, opening and closing doors and giving necessary instructions to the handicapped. This traffic would be at any given time planned or due to an emergency. We are all affected by this problem listed above and also setting a precedent for future businesses in our neighborhood. A private person may have the right of action of public nuisance. Security studies and other unanswered questions. Will there be a security guard, security locks for clients whose patients need refuge? Does this business have a license? If so, and I think she answered some of this. If so, with whom and where do you get a copy of the application? Will there be proper staffing? These are all questions that every neighbor has on their mind in order to feel safe. Define the clientele and then define skilled workers. Will there have any, will they have only the lowest CNA credentials? Will they qualify? I think we understand now that there's just going to be one employee and volunteers according to the ordinance. Which also, we all know the volunteers can come and go as well. How will clientele be screened to make sure they're not dangerous to self or neighbors? Clients whose parents, these are clients whose parents can't handle them all the time. Okay. No, oh my gosh. God bless all of you. I am not meaning anything wrong, but you need a respite. That's the definition of the house. Has there been an economic study to determine the possible detriment to having the 24/7 business in my neighborhood?
Yes.
There's been an economic study. Well, that's good. And I don't know what they said.
When somebody is at the podium, it is their time to speak, and we all need to be heard. We all have our turn to be heard. We ask that all comments be between the person giving the presentation and the board. We don't want discussion and dialogue back and forth between the people who are speaking and the audience. Please try to be respectful and courteous. Thank you.
Has there been a waste impact study? What kind of precedent does this cause if allowed? Will other businesses be allowed easier access, which will completely alter the neighborhood? No stated limit on amount, well, and there actually is I think they said 6 clients, but that didn't determine if there was 6 clients at one time and is there a different client at every hour. It's open-ended. It may start fine, but what will happen in the future? That's the question. In conclusion, no matter what is said, if passed, this business could eventually have clients of any age with anything from addictions to perpetual screaming fits. This proposed business has used broad terms, undefined types of ages and numbers of clients, because the 6 clients could be that 1 hour, but then there could be a whole different 6 clients the next hour, according to what's allowed, and inclusion of emergency care. Therefore, this business is vague and easy to manipulate what ends up happening in the long run, causing the potential for constant 24/7 conflict, disruptions, and safety hazards in our sweet little neighborhood that was not created for this type of enterprise. This action against single home living is not allowed under the restrictive covenants, and if the city allows this violation, it will result in a lawsuit by the homeowners who wish to dispute are covered by the statute Title 60, Section 856.
Thank you. Next person, and I'll do my best to read. I hope that I get names right. If I say something wrong, please. I believe Lori Ragland. Okay, thank you. I have Ellen. Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. Jeff Wiggin. And while he's approaching, I do want to reiterate, please leave your presentation to about 3 to 5 minutes.
My name is Jeff Reeves. I'm 1306 East 80th Street, North of Washington. The reason we have to have this special perception and figure out what the rest of the house is because they don't exist. They're not there. I have a 6-year-old son. He came to us when he was 1 year old. Choices his biological parents made. Very bad. Choices his biological parents made bad. And he suffers because of that. He has 20 diagnoses, 3 of which we figured out in the last 3 months. 19 surgeries, most major. He's 6.5 years old. If we go somewhere, we pack an entire suitcase that you can't fit on an airline because it's too big with his food. Just his food, because he's too big. He's fed 5 times a day. It takes over 45 minutes to tube feed him. Because the process to do it requires medication to be prepared, to be put with the food, mixed with the food, even placed, and put in his tube. 45 minutes, 5 times a day. There isn't a place that can do that. He's been with us for 6 years. It's a wonderful little boy. My wife and I have gone on 2 trips in that time period. 2. One, my mother watched it. She's 7 years old. She can't do that. When she's a medical registered nurse, and she can't do it. It requires so much work. The other time, she watched him for us. One night, so we could, I think it was 2 nights, so we could go to Branson. In 5 years, 5 years, he's a little boy. He's not one of those. He's not one of these people, or those people. That's what's expressed earlier. He's a little boy. He plays. He walks around, he talks, he plays. Occasionally he actually eats some things, which we marvel at. It's a miracle that he can do that. It's a miracle he can walk. He's a wonderful little boy, and there are absolutely no resources outside of other parents who have this same need that he can go to. There is no place. There isn't. It doesn't exist. I hope it does. I hope it exists after tonight. It's not like he's going to be there 5 days a week. We're not dropping him off and going to work. That's not how this works. This is respite, not daycare. Respite. Now, some people may need more help. We're just asking for an opportunity to have some place for our son to stay, while other children stay with some other people because they can't. He can't. He can go 3 to 4 hours, 5 if you really want to push his feedings. And that's it. After that, you have to feed him. You have to give him his medicine. And it's complicated. It requires work. It requires somebody who knows what they're doing and the ability to do it. And they don't exist very often. They don't come around very often. People don't come to your door to do this. You can't hire an 18-year-old teen to come stay at your house for 5 hours and watch your kids for a child like this, a little boy like that. He deserves a place to go and play with other little boys, play with kids maybe older than him. He deserves that opportunity. A few hours, maybe it's overnight, maybe it's 2 days, whatever it is. When I got here, somebody told me they didn't want me moving in and staying in that house. I don't think you understand. That's not how this works. I stayed home. I'm not going to pack 3 suitcases for that one boy alone to go take a trip along with all the other stuff that would require for me and my 3 children to go stay in somebody else's house. That doesn't make any sense. This is an opportunity for him to go someplace where he is safe, someplace where somebody knows how to help him, to take care of him, and to love on him. The most important thing, to love on him. Not treat him like a them, or a those, or a cripple, or a handicap. He is a child, 6 years old, with special needs. That's it. Special needs. Everybody's got them. Kids are just more than normal. And it saddens me to think the opportunity is here, and it may not go. I can't get it in my town. I hope someday we can. If there's no opportunity for me in Wausau, that exists.
I've been informed that there's a gentleman here, Rudy, who needs to leave quickly, and we'll take Rudy if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Board. What a tremendous opportunity that you have this evening in looking at this request to bring a really great neighbor into this community, but also to really put Jenks a little bit more at the forefront in the respite care need in the state, but also in this region. I do want to read a letter that I wrote and provided to the board.
Could you state your address?
I'm so sorry. Rudy Upshaw at 14409 South Urbana Place in Bixby. So I did provide the board a letter that I would like to read, also so that the audience has a chance to get that perspective as well. I want to provide some feedback to you and your team on Jeanette O'Hara and the use of the house they've been offered to rent. I've known Brad and Jeanette for 7 years and very close to them in their mission of Will's House. Will's House is a very simple, not-for-profit, for donation support purposes established in honor of Brad and Jeanette's adopted son, Will, that passed away in February of 2017. I was honored to speak at Will's funeral service. Will was a child that fell through the cracks in the foster system before Brad and Jeanette came into his life. His story was absolutely heart-wrenching as he was in an institutional care environment with significant health issues and a very short life expectancy. He had no family and a very poor quality of life. There is so much more in the story of his life and the impact he has made on other kids like him and their families. When Will passed away after being adopted by Jeanette and Brad, his life was completely changed. And he experienced amazing love of a family and brothers. Jeanette and Brad have been drawn to adopt kids that have special needs. Jeanette and Brad have also helped other families of kids with special needs by going over to watch their kids in those home environments so the parents can have a break or a date night. This also lets the parents' kids socialize and have different experiences with other children. Jeanette's mission for Will House, purely the brand Jeanette uses, is to basically be a blessing to other families that need a break with their kids and provide a home-like environment for those kids to enjoy while their moms or dads go shopping on a date, etc. It's basically to provide a healthy environment with everything that particular child may need for their physical needs while the parents take that break. Jeanette and Brad's second home used for them, and Will's house will maintain the look, feel, and curb appeal of a high-quality Jenks home, and the traffic will be just as it is for the neighborhood. Additionally, Jeanette and Brad have been great neighbors in their current home at 806 118th Street in Jenks. And we'll have that same good neighborhood environment in the second home. I wanted to speak to the character of Jeanette and Brad and what I have personally seen been in the home environment when they've been caring for children in that home environment. They are high character people with high integrity and honesty. They will be good neighbors and will actually bring the value of the neighborhood up by maintaining the property well. They also wanted to make sure they did things above reproach, which is why they chose to visit with the city on this issue. I highly recommend that Jeanette be approved for this variance, and I can personally vouch for their character and what they have presented to the city and their neighbors is accurate, correct, and honest. Further, I can attest that should an issue or conflict arise, Jeanette will work diligently with her neighbors to correct it so there is no impact to those neighbors, neighborhood, or the city of Jenks. Thank you very much.
George Reeves.
Good evening. My name is George Reeves. I live at 917 North Ivy Place, right next door. My wife's a nurse. I was a volunteer firefighter, EMT. I grew up in Jenks, graduated here in '78. Around the world with the Navy for 30-some years and came back here to live. On a nice, quiet street that has parking issues already. In my opinion, as a former firefighter, the amount of room to go up and down that street, while it may have been good for codes at the time, fire equipment, ambulances, everything gotten bigger. And there are problems there that the bottom line is this is a business. You're asking us to be okay with opening a business right next to my house. When I bought the house, there wasn't a business there. It's a piece of rental property. And if a single family wants to move in there for a rental property, that's fine. But your variance is too vague. I'm sorry. I know what the city attorney said. I don't really have an opinion on it, other than the fact that this guy dealt with the Navy for so many years, in my current positions that I hold. I can shoot holes in this thing all day long. You don't know what your occupancy numbers are. You can't tell me what's going to be going in and out of this place. You haven't addressed biohazard, because these are special needs children. They're very likely good, but you're going to have biohazard issues. And you haven't addressed how that's going to be disposed of if it occurs. I mean, the fire load in the house, I understand it looks like a normal house from the outside. And there's been a lot of work put in next to it. It's made a hell of a lot of noise while I've they're trying to rest, my dogs would bark because of the people going in and out of there, and workers parking in front of the fire hydrant right in front of the house, and I had to have them go move. I mean, it started already, and they're not even in there. Okay? This thing will balloon. I don't care what anybody says. If your variance isn't written such that it can't, it will. You're saying it'll be children and young adults. Just because the guy is 24 years old and has the mental capacity of a 4 or 5-year-old doesn't mean it's a child. I still have issues with the fact that somebody who could be dangerous to themselves or somebody else is living next door and they're going in and out of the facility without knowing who they are. Okay? I know my neighbors. I don't know who's coming in and out of this place. I mean, it's just that simple. You're wanting to open a business, well then fine. Pick a commercially zoned place and open that business. It can be just like the inside. It can be just like the inside of the home. See metal buildings, you walk inside and it's the Taj Mahal. Okay? So there's no reason in the world that you couldn't open a storefront on Main Street if you wanted to. You can open it in Bixby, you can open it in Owasso, you can open it anywhere you want to, but you don't have to open it in a residential area. I mean, it's just that simple. And, like I said, the traffic, my home value is going to decrease. I guarantee it. And I'm in a position where now, knowing what's going in next door, I may want to sell that home and move out of Jenks. And I grew up here. I knew what this place looked like before most of you were even born. Maybe you. I'll be nice. But, because I used to live where there are no houses now because the airport authority took them. And I'd hunt and fish across the levee every single day as a kid. So, you're trying to take a nice, quiet residential area that I moved into a few years ago specifically for that reason. It was close to where I grew up as a kid. It was nice and quiet. I checked the neighbors, they were great. And now you want to drop a commercial entity right next door to me with all the racket and the noise that's going to happen, and the car doors opening and closing all hours of the day and night. Like I said, my wife's a nurse, so she has rotating shifts trying to sleep during the day. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. And I'm going to have potentially fire equipment, EMS rolling up and down the street all hours of the day and night in case of accidents and falls and slips and overdoses or whatever's going on, or whatever medications they may be taking. So, I don't want this. I think I've made it abundantly clear that I don't want this. And you, in my opinion, need to really think hard because you're not living there. I am. So my opinion, being right next door to this facility, should matter more than anybody except the woman that's living on the other side of it, and the guys that are living across the street from it, and the people who are living right behind it. And if you vote to approve this, I just don't know how you would. I have the utmost respect and feelings for the people that are taking care of these kids. That's great. But do it where it should be done. They say, oh, well, there's no place, I can't go anywhere. No, Will's house. You call them, they'll send somebody to your house. They just said they would. So, I'll knock it off. I know you guys are short on time, but that's my opinion, and I appreciate you taking it to heart. Thank you.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Elijah to talk for me because I'm a little emotional right now.
Is that okay?
Could you give your full name and
Yeah.
address, please?
Elijah Blankenship. I live at 3624 South Urbana Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Gatesway Foundation. We're a 60-year organization that has cared for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities for that entire time. It was started out of the love of Helen Gates for her son Ronnie, who had developmental disabilities in a time where nobody believed that people with disabilities could function in society. She went against all odds and against an entire community of people and created something amazing. And today I can stand proud here today and say that I serve 350 people annually who do contribute to society, do not create a nuisance, and are not inherently dangerous to anybody. They are American citizens. If you believe that American citizens are inherently bad, then you should not go forward with this exemption. But if you believe that people, Americans, are good people, and that people with disabilities are vulnerable, just like the elderly and just like children, then you will do a service to this population, because it is greatly needed. 1 in 5 Americans have a disability, and I would probably argue most of the people in the room have a disability or are vulnerable. There is nobody in this room who I feel threatened by in any way, shape, or form just by their existence. And I hope that the board will understand that no person with disabilities is in any way, shape, or form inherently dangerous, a nuisance, or anything such. This is a service to people who need it. Just as most of the people in this room will have a need at some point in their life, and luckily they will have a friend who will be able to stand at this podium for them, or be able to meet them at their home if they have a need. Create a meal for them if they are mourning a death of a loved one, or so on and so forth. I'll speak personally to Miss O'Hara here and her husband Brad. They are genuinely great people. I have worked with this population for over 10 years. My uncle has a developmental disability himself. My grandparents, who are 75 years old, take care of him, who is 55. My mother and my other uncle, who do not have a disability, have also supported them. My uncle is very lucky to have family who have helped and supported in any way, shape, or form, who have been qualified and trained to do the service that they do for my grandparents, who have been evangelists and pastors for many, 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 many years. I'm proud to stand here today in front of the board with this appeal to say, please, call to your heart and call to the truth that no person with disabilities is anything than just an American citizen. That's who they are. And we owe that as a city government, as a state government, and as a federal government to protect those individuals, just as the Department of Justice and and HUD instruct us to do. We owe it to them to protect them. Nothing more and nothing less. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Stacy?
I'm gonna get emotional, sorry. Hi, my name is Stacy Sexton. I live at 11605 South Mulberry Lane, and that is in Churchill Park. And I am here on behalf of the Churchill Park HOA. I am actually the acting treasurer and the acting co-president as of last night. We're now looking for another president. But on that behalf, I am aware of Will's House because I have been in contact with the O'Haras when they have been updating their home to make it a more presentable and more accessible for wheelchairs. I have spoke to the homeowners around them. They have nothing but good things to say to them and about them. And then on that note, I am here as a mom of one of those that so dishearteningly was called that he's gonna have biohazard when he goes over and stays with Jeanette. And that is so disheartening because I'll tell you, I am also, my husband is a board of directors of the Akdar Shriners here in Tulsa. He will be the potentate, and I'm actually missing a business meeting tonight to be here to speak on behalf. We volunteer to take burned and crippled children to hospitals at no cost to parents. My son was forced to graduate during COVID in 2020. I have an older daughter and I have a younger daughter in Jenks. That our youngest is actually graduating Monday and is a lifer at Jenks. I am completely involved in the school system, but with Akdar, we do the circus, and that is our biggest fundraiser to send kids to these hospitals at no cost to families, almost something like Jeanette is doing. And I do the circus office, And when he cold-heartedly could not go back to school anymore, I had no resources. And Jeanette, actually, our Facebook page in Churchill Park, I reached out and I said, I just need some help. I need a couple hours so I can go up and do this program. I had 5 people tell me about Will's House. And Jeanette messaged me personally and said, I've heard your name throughout the system because we've gone to the same physical therapy places because we've lived in Jenks since 2009. And she said, let me help you. So Elijah has went over there and the kids come to the door and they're like, my buddy's here, my friend's here. And it's not that I drop him off at the butt crack of dawn or go pick him up at midnight. It's during the day so I can go help others. And he's never been a burden. And I'll tell you, if he gets out and rolls down the street, I'm going to give him a sucker or I'm going to give him a pat on the back. Because to me, that is an accomplishment for this child. And he just wants accepted. Now, I stay at home 24 hours a day with my son. My youngest is fixing to go to college. I don't have that respite. I still reach out to her. I have to go get cardiac help. I have heart problems. I am honestly actually disabled myself. And Jeanette has watched Elijah while I go get my heart taken care of because my husband is out making a living to provide for us. And I just want to say, just being in Churchill Park, we don't have that problem. I'll tell you my problem right now is speeders going down the road. And I'm sure y'all have heard about it because our neighbors drive. But that's the complaint. I've never had a complaint of somebody bringing one of those people over and the biohazard and the loudness. I mean, if he gets happy and he laughs and hollers, turn on the radio and dance with him. I promise you will not smile any bigger than seeing him smile and dance. Thank you. I hope you approve this.
Lena R.
You don't want to try. I really wasn't going to talk tonight, but I feel like I have to now. My name is Glenna Reggiano. My address is 6212 South Fulton Circle, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I am also a career pediatric physical therapist. I've known Jeanette since high school, where we both went to Jenks. I've lived in Jenks for many, many years, but at this point, I do not anymore. But I am one of the PTs for the school district. Jeanette said that this is a district sought by families for our special education services, and it is. We have children moving in across the state to our district because we provide inclusivity and services that we are known for. It's a Jenks thing. It should be a Jenks City thing too. It shouldn't be just our school district. One of the concerns is the traffic and the parking. None of these kids are driving themselves. Not a single one. Their parents aren't staying. They're being dropped off and left. It's just like my best friend coming over and leaving. There isn't another place unless you find a family to help you, and Jeanette is this family. I have watched Jeanette's boys previously, and the parents, I watched Jeanette's boys for 2 hours so she could go Christmas shopping once. You know, so that's what they're looking for. They need 2 hours to get out of the house, to get to Target, to buy all the Christmas presents and get them wrapped. This is the kind of service that these families need. We've heard that the neighbors are the ones that should be able to say, and the Phillips family right here is right across the street at 924, and they have been in that house for 24 years, and they are in support of Will's House. This community has always striven for excellence. We've always been told it's a Jenks thing, and we should be excited to offer this service for the first in the state.
My name is Amy Cooper. I live at 715 North First Street, so also in this neighborhood. I'm a current homeowner of 5 years there. I am also a career nonprofit for early childhood education and special education services.
I want to start by asking if you guys have children. Have children? Conversational. Just a nod would work. Okay. My child is 6'2". He is a ball of joy. He was born typical. He met every milestone. And at 4 years old, he started having relentless seizures. I did not have a community to turn to. I didn't have anybody. I moved to Jenks because I had heard about their special education program. He lost everything. He is now 6'2". He looks like a Division I athlete. He's 14 years old and he functions around 18 months. The worst thing this kid's gonna do in a neighborhood is hug you. He is a joy to this world, and anybody in this room would be delighted to know him. I think it's really important to mention, whenever we talk about respite, it is a break for caregivers of somebody who goes through a hardship or a very difficult time, and I assure you, I have a difficult time every single day. I manage that with grace and humility. I would expect neighbors of a home like this to do the same. I want to share a little bit about Jeanette's family. I think that's pretty important here. Many have spoke to the character, but I think one thing that stands with me always, the first time I met Jeanette's son, he was 7 at the time. I haven't known her long, but her child, Will, that passed, and my son were in the same special ed class, and we never knew each other. Because that's how intense special ed parenting is. You never get to know those families. And the first time Anson, her oldest, came to me, he said, "What's your favorite thing about Cannon?" You know, and everybody wants a superficial, super quick answer. So I always say his hair because he's got great curly hair. And it took me like a year to really think about what it is. And you know what it is? He has no prejudice. He wants to be a neighbor to you. He wants to be a neighbor to you. He does not know the homeless. He does not know race, gender, sexuality. He loves people. And people belong in this community. People belong in the Jenks community and every other community. I imagine there are a lot of people that grew up in Tulsa County on both sides of this room. Many people are probably aware that there was an institution here called HISM. And when a HISM class action lawsuit happened, those parents were not upset just for their children. They were upset at the fact that every child there deserved better. And then a lawsuit happened that said, our kids, our adults, can live in the community freely. We're not asking to live there. When I need a break because my mom has surgery and my dad's a physician and no one else can be with her, I want to be that person for my mom. But a 6'2" kiddo with a severe seizure disorder, he isn't sitting in a hospital room, right? Not without having seizures every single day. Our lives are very complicated. Everyone in this room has a complicated life. And I respect that to every degree. There are a lot of hardships. But this is not the fight. The fight is how we include kids, how we include adults. Give them a job. Do you need your driveway swept? Maybe we can help you with that. We are a neighborly group of people. Let us help you. We want to be a neighbor. There's nothing more I can say about that. I think the most special thing about Will's house is that Jeanette is the only person in my son's life that is not paid to be in it. I imagine if you guys have kids, you understand the importance of childcare. After 12 years old, Jenks stops, and every public school stops, because most 12-year-olds can stay on their own, correct? And whenever we look at that and we say, well, we have this 12-year-old that's now bigger and bigger and bigger than all of the staff in the building, who helps? Jeanette, the 100-pound physical therapist that is still a boss and can still hang with him. And you know what they do? They play basketball. They are not overdosing. Yeah. Thanks for your consideration. Huh? No, I think it's a good consideration for your time, and thank you for your evening.
I'll be speaking on Ms. Wood's behalf. I'm her daughter, Angela Wood. I'll also be speaking on Jennifer Hilton's behalf. You can pass one of those to each of the board people. I flashed those with color codes, so I'll reference the color code and you can flip to the picture as I'm speaking. Good evening, my name is Angela Wood and I'm representing Treva Wood and the property located at 1006 North Ivy Street. We have owned the property at this location for 45 years. I'm also representing my sister Jennifer Hilton at the property address of 1022 West G. My sister has owned that property for 28 years. Before I begin with comments and concerns, I would like to address the very contentious and downright hateful environment that has been created. I think that we all can acknowledge that from the comments this evening. We've not at any time denounced, critiqued, or ridiculed the work that the applicant does. In fact, I have donated to Will's House in the past. Ms. O'Hara has documentation of that. This is not an assault or an indictment on the nonprofit. It is not judgmental of the work she does or those they serve. This is not about her character. It is in no way discriminatory to the handicapped or special needs population to which I, as a hearing impaired person, belong. Through social media, the applicant continues to contribute to this contentious situation. She has posted on social media that her opponents or protesters are passively and anonymously threatening, that we are grossly misinformed, and that we are uneducated about the services provided by a nonprofit agency. Ms. O'Hara has allowed supporters on social media to characterize her neighbors as ignorant, discriminatory, and non-believers who have no compassion and no empathy for anyone. She had the opportunity to change the course and focus on the true issues at hand, and she chose not to. In fact, it seems that the applicant has merely stirred the pot instead of attempting to address the questions or concerns that neighbors have. As the board can see, most of the letters of support stem from the work of the nonprofit rather than referencing the actual property. And that's what this is about. You are a municipal entity, and this is about the property in Jenks. It is not about the work. That this obviously, she is a wonderful woman. She has a heart of gold. No one, I don't think anyone in this whole arena would dispute that. So we need to take this emotional part out of this, and we need to focus on the property, because that's what this is about. I am compassionate and empathetic to the situation of those who need assistance and their families. And for those of you who on social media continually say you're going to pray for me because I need to find Jesus, I appreciate your prayers. I have found Jesus in my soul.
You have to stay. You have to talk to the
just
board.
because I
You may
oppose.
only speak to the board about the case.
Okay, thank you. Just because I have a different opinion of you doesn't mean I'm not a Christian. So we need to take these personal assaults out of here, and I will begin speaking about the questions and comments I have. First, who actually owns the property? In an email dated 4/29 to Jennifer Hilton, she says that her nonprofit owns the home, and it is only because the nonprofit owns the home that a variance is needed. However, according to Tulsa County Assessor's Office, that's not correct. According to Ms. Hilton, that's incorrect. According to the variance application, that is incorrect. So most people kind of know if they own a home or not. Who owns the home? The assessor's office says it's Rudy and, Alice Ann Freshel. Do they own the home, or does the applicant own the home?
I wouldn't respond. Anyone can make applications for this.
Yeah, that's not what I'm asking. I understand that she made application. The reason I'm asking is because she lied about owning the home, and I don't understand the rationale for that. Do we have a letter granting permission for a nonprofit to operate at this address from the actual homeowners? Ms. Hilton was the one who told me that that was required on the application. Do we have that?
I do not have a letter. It's required that they are in agreement.
You, pardon me?
The applicant has to, if they do not own it,
Mhm.
but in this case, I will let her explain it later, the ownership.
Okay, well, so we don't have that, but you're telling me.
I do not have a
Okay,
letter.
well, you told me it was a requirement, so do we have a valid application if we don't have that letter?
I'll let it be answered later. Thank you. Keep going.
That's a legal question.
Your time
Also,
is
the
up.
legal question is, how can a nonprofit agency operate on a property that has homestead exemption tax reduction on it if she's not gonna live there?
Has been 5 minutes. We'll do it.
Okay, I'll keep going. You see in your packet, parking, adequate ingress and egress, and traffic and noise. If you will look at the pink tab, you will see a picture of the parking situation that, she said is non-existent. I about got hit head on by the red pickup truck that you'll see in front of me in that picture. So you can look on the street and you can look at the pictures and you can see there is a parking problem already. Before the board has even had the opportunity to discuss this variance, the excessive parking on the street has become an issue with volunteer groups and deliveries. I got run over by the truck. I have a question about intended use and range of services. The application is for a respite house, and the applicant has referred to the services as skilled babysitting and childcare and young adult care. Ms. O'Hara, as well as Ms. Hilton with the City of Jenks, have equated the service to a small home child care or home daycare. It certainly seems that there's an attempt to minimize the scope of services and activities that are envisioned by the applicant. On her Facebook page, she has a video saying this house will be a safe place that you can use any way that you need to use it. That's pretty open-ended.
Thank you.
May I give my conclusion statement, please? This is not, okay, well, whatever, you've already made your decision. I mean, when we have someone sitting up here saying that they've had that personal experience, and we're talking all about emotional things, no one's talking about the property.
Everybody has the same amount of time. Thank you. King W. Road 309 South.
Is it Kim? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm hurry. I'm just gonna, just pass it down, I kind of, that we have, there's no pictures. Okay, so, yes, I'm Kim Wiles, my address is 10369 South 92nd East Avenue, I live in Tulsa, Bixby Schools. And I didn't really prepare, but I'm kind of flying by seat my pants, but, so I work for OU, a program called Sooner Success. And that's what's being passed around here, just to give you guys some information. A lot of people aren't aware of what Sooner Success does. And we are a nonprofit organization, and we're statewide. So I cover Tulsa County. There's all kinds of different programs that we offer. A lot of times families will call, providers will call, and they just want resources for families that have disabilities. So our target is birth to 21. That's the age group that we work with. So I will get requests all the time for respite care. I get requests for therapy. It could be autism related. So it just varies, but that's kind of what we do. But respite is a big one. We just recently got a big grant from the Disabilities Council in Oklahoma City. And we were able to do a respite care event for families at the Hard Rock just over the weekend. And we had 18 rooms reserved. And these families, some of them haven't had breaks for 6 years. Some of them it's been 15 years they haven't had a break. So it was great that we were able to give them that opportunity. So just want you to know that there is a need out there. Again, I just covered Tulsa last year. Last month I had 42 referrals. Not all of them were respite, but they were just for some disability type related. Again, birth to 21 is our age that we target on. We're statewide, like I mentioned before, but I just want you guys to know that I've known Jeanette for a while. Her personal home that she lives in now, I sold her. I'm a realtor too on the side. And I sold her house to her that she lives in now. The respite house was something that she did with the seller herself. But, so anyway, that's what I do. I just wanted to at least let you guys know what Senior Success is. There is a need in the community. And, so. All right, thank you.
Jim F. No address provided. 978-807.
Oh, that's my phone, right? I'm not Jim. Lisa, maybe? I was writing it. Maybe. Lisa T. Yeah, no, Jim. Just call Jim.
I apologize, I'm not good.
That's okay. I didn't, yeah, I would have made it legible if I would have known if you were trying to read it. My name is Lisa Turner. I am happy to be here to speak to you on behalf of support of approval of Will's House. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, 7017 East 52nd Place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm also the CEO of the Arc of Oklahoma. We are, thank you for giving me your attention. I'm the CEO of the Arc of Oklahoma. We serve individuals and families with intellectual and developmental disabilities, particularly in the Tulsa and Jenks community. Personally, I can tell you that as a mom of a 21-year-old daughter with developmental disabilities who would be happy to have interaction with any member of your lovely community and would only want inclusion, and support and love from any of your neighbors. She doesn't drive. Unfortunately, she won't have the privilege of driving, but we would be wonderful neighbors in your community. My daughter was born 9 weeks premature. When she was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck. She was not breathing. She had to be resuscitated due to lack of oxygen at birth. She has cerebral palsy, epilepsy, which is seizures, and other developmental disabilities. She requires 24-hour care. She will never be able to live on her own. Several years ago, my daughter's father, who I was married to for 20 years, passed away 5 years ago, leaving me a single mom with 2 children, one of which my youngest is here, Megan, who's in the audience, who's 17. Having any child with a disability is a challenge. Being a single mom of a child with disability and another child without disabilities is even more challenge. I can tell you that in my personal experience, I've never faced anything more difficult in my life. You're alone. There's no one to help you. Family members are old. They can't do it. Friends can't do it. Thank God that Jeanette has a vision to help families like mine. Unfortunately, because I'm a single mom and don't have any other financial support, I can't leave the workforce to stay at home with my child full time. I had to make a decision to have her in a place where they can provide care for her because I have to work to provide for my family. Many families that we get calls from every day at the Arc of Oklahoma are parents just like myself and just like others that heard today. Our children, and including the gentleman who's here today, they are children
who know no differences. They love and respect everyone that they know. And all we are asking is for the same love and respect of the neighbors of Jenks. In fact, it is a civil right for people to be able to gather in a community. You can't tell me that as a resident in a community that I can't have over my friend who's going to drink and have loud parties. You can't tell me that I can't do that. These people are not going to be doing anything like that. No car doors are going to be slamming in someone's bedroom door in the middle of the night. No more than someone else that lives in the neighborhood, and probably less. So there's a huge need. Some community is going to do this, whether it's Jenks or someone else. But wouldn't it be great if Jenks could be the first? You guys are a wonderful, inclusive community. People flock to this area for the education component and special ed. Why not do this? Thank you for your time.
Jody and Martha Harrison. Okay, thank you. Robert and Linda.
My name is Robert Ashenhurst. I'm here with my wife Linda. First of all, I just want to say my heart goes out to Jeanette and her family with the loss of the, obviously.
Can we get the address?
I'm sorry?
Address?
908 North Ivy Place, across the street from the proposed property. I fully believe that this is an incredibly important thing that they're doing. We are not, as neighbors, we're not anti-American, we're not anti-disability, we're not anti-anything that has been suggested that we are. We're simply neighbors that have a neighborhood we're trying to preserve. This is not a question of the need, because this is a great cause that they're trying to get accomplished here. And I'd like to be a part of helping with that. The question here is location, and only location. It does not need to be in a residential neighborhood that we have built up and protected over the years. Thank you.
Rita, Casey.
Rita Casey at 918 North Ivy Street, catty corner from behind them. Again, like that other gentleman just said, I think it's wonderful what she's doing. I believe there probably is a need, or definitely is a need. People from all over, except for anybody outside of Jenks, is all saying that they want it. But again, a residence is a residence. When we signed our papers in 08, we had to sign a paper that said that we understood that there was an airport and airplanes are going to be flying over our house. Yes, if you live in Jenks, it just doesn't matter. It just depends on what trajectory, what runway they use. Yes, everybody knows there's an airport. Are we going to have to sign papers or divulge that if we were to sell our property that there is a respite house in our neighborhood? I don't know. Just a question to put it out there, because will it devalue our properties? Like I said, I believe that there is a need, and I feel for them. I know it, and this is not a question of her character or anything else. We just don't want it in our neighborhood. A storefront, I say, on Main Street or one of those where it's easy access, bigger area for them to have more people. If this really takes off like they're hoping to, it's not going to be 6 to 15 people. they're gonna start popping up, taking up all the, houses around to have more of them, more houses like that. I mean, I know the need is there. It's just that I don't think they can fulfill everything they need in a residential house, and we don't want it in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Wes, Cyrus?
Good evening. Actually, the last time I was sitting here, I think I got a speeding ticket when I was 18 years old, so, you know, it's a little bit nervous here. My name is Wes Cyrus. I live at 3366 West 82nd Street out in West Tulsa, Jenks Schools. I'm also a board member on Will's House, and I honestly didn't think it was going to be this contentious. I didn't think this was a big issue, really.
Please let him speak.
So, now, a lot of y'all look maybe about my age, okay? Some people may have grandkids, some people may have kids that drop them off at your grandparents' house, at their grandparents' house, your parents' house, your in-laws. That's respite care. We're doing it tomorrow night. Drop them off at the in-laws. We're gonna go out and have dinner. That's respite care. I think everybody should, I mean, I don't know if that's a right, but shoot, I sure like it. I think everybody does. Need a night away. Every parent out there, whether they're disabled, whether they're normal, that's not I don't think that's even a close, that doesn't matter. We all need a night away. Okay? I've also heard a lot about, somebody just mentioned the airport. And where this house is, you know, the airport is obviously pretty close. And, you know, the noise at the airport will be a lot more noisy than, especially next week. If you don't like noise, get out before Monday or Tuesday. You know, 1 or 2 private jets flying in every 30 seconds. Okay? One of the things that's really, really disheartening is that I continue to hear that this is incredibly important. It's incredibly needed. This is a service that we need to provide, but not close to me. I don't want those people close to me. Being a lifelong member of the Jenks community, I really, really am surprised to hear that. Thanks for your consideration, guys.
Margie?
I am Margie Keaton. I live at 906 North Ivy Place. I have owned and lived in my home since 1978. Ivy Place is only 1 block long, and it is a quiet residential street with very little traffic. We do have some parking problems, but little traffic. I am opposed to any changes in zoning for 921 North Ivy Place to allow any kind of business. Once residential property is zoned for any purpose, it is never changed back to residential. I feel our property will decrease in value with this zoning. It is my understanding Mrs. O'Hare does not plan on living on the property, but will be using it for commercial purposes for which they will be paid. Again, I oppose the special exception to allow a respite care house at 921 North Ivy Place. Thank you. am Joanne Greener Beach, 1015 West E Street, which my family has lived at since 1966. And I didn't know much about this, and so I wanted to come and see. And I observe many emotions on both sides. My question to you, is there any way, and I know like this is what you do, you sit here and you hear it, but is there any way that this could, since this is the first time for this, if there could be an additional hearing for more information, like for me, and you've heard people say things are really vague, and I would just personally like to have more information. That is my question, my observation. Is there any way that another meeting could be set up or something that there's more information? Something like a business plan or something like that. Something that you would get a loan on at a bank or credit union. That's my comment or my observation. It just seems like things are still a little bit vague.
Karen Castle?
No, I don't need to talk, thank you.
Thank you. Leah Moonlight?
Hello, my name is Leah Mungai. I am at 1024 West H Street. I am here also because I live in the neighborhood, but also a parent to my daughter who has special needs since birth. We gave birth to her in Africa, and I had to bring her back here with no family here. And you guys are married with children, you know, you guys get date night. You get to go to dinner and lunch. Family dinners are okay, but she can't eat. She's tube fed for the most part. So I'm here on both sides, my neighborhood, yes, but also my daughter, and the special needs community from the Little Lighthouse and from Will's House. We do have a quiet neighborhood, other than the planes and a couple of dogs that bark all the time. I do not have dogs, but I like them. But I'm for the Will's House because it would give me an opportunity to have a date night with my husband and to get a little bit of a break. I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband's a truck driver who's over the road, and all I have is school. So, thank you.
Lisa S. North First Street.
Hi, my name is Luisa Sanchez. I was here with Andy Cooper, who was like dressed like a Valentine. I don't remember him. So address. Parents are divorced, live two places. Which one do you want? Okay, 2616 East 88th Street, Tulsa. I'm a Jews lifer, so I do love this community. I actually was Cannon's babysitter, and that's the only reason I'm here tonight was to do him. I don't know Jeanette. She seems good. Really, I wasn't planning on talking to you guys, but I think it's really important to kind of realize the opportunity you guys have right now. you know, I don't really know any of you guys, I don't recognize you guys, but, I think you guys would have really memorable names, based on the decision we made tonight. Impactful on these families and a lot of families to come. These are some amazing people. They really are. I learned so much from Canon. I'm 20 years old. And I didn't think I could really learn anything from a babysitting job. I really just didn't want to be broke during the summer. But Canon, he made me realize I wanted to serve a mission. He made me realize how to look at other people. You can learn so much about what it really means to be a good person, to be a neighbor from these kids. Don't turn that opportunity away. Don't be that guy or girl. You guys are obviously important enough to be making this decision, so I hope that there's some education that goes into that. And I've never stopped learning with him. And I've met some pretty amazing people. I get to surround myself by amazing people, and it's all based on this community. It's really beautiful. Don't let it look like it isn't. It's pretty amazing, actually. Thank you.
Christina O. Yes. Thank you. Rudy Upshaw. Thank you. Megan Knox.
I think like everyone else, I signed up because I thought it was a sign-in. But I'm Megan Knox. I live at 9720 South Darlington Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Jenks School District. I forgot my phone. I'll use my time to get my phone. Okay. I'm a para at Jenks East Intermediate, work with 5th and 6th graders. I was hired because I am skilled, certified in what the school is required, which would be the same when Jeanette has children in her home. Everyone that comes through there, the adults that are providing care, are skilled. They are not they are able to provide the proper care needed, the safe care needed. So I guess I wanted to address that because that had been brought up. Like if she's working with DHS, which she does, DHS requires, we are former foster parents, my husband and I, DHS requires that who I leave my foster child with is skilled. That would be a requirement for her. I have 4 kids. Eventually all 4 of them would to be driving, which would be 4 cars plus my husband and I. And I do need to apologize to the gentleman who brought up the parking in front of the fire hydrant. That was my husband, and he did move his vehicle, and he will never do it again. So I apologize. He didn't break any rules. Mad that we don't, so 4 kids, sorry, I'm so nervous and I'm freezing cold. 4 kids that eventually would be driving. It would be a lot of traffic. If we bought that home, my kids would park their cars there, and there's nothing anyone can do about it because we have a right to park our vehicles there. So I think that was something that was brought up. And I hoped that tonight would educate neighbors. Nobody is out to attack anyone. I'm sorry that people feel that way. That is not the intent. I think when we are talking about respite care and you've been dealing with a special needs child, people get very defensive of their vacation and their time off. So no one is attacking. And I just hope that you guys will see the good. for special needs kids. So, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Gail White, I live at 1038 West G Street in the location neighborhood that we're talking about. I think, first of all, I am a mother of a special needs child. She's 4 years old, she's gone through G schools. We've been here for a very long time, I'm still taking care of her. I understand as well as anybody else the needs that are required for a family to take care of a special needs child. I don't think as a neighborhood, we're really questioning that. We know the need, we understand the need. Our concern is that you're making a decision on our home and our property and our neighborhood that may have repercussions for years to come that we don't know. We understand that it is needed. Are there no other places, is what our question is as a neighborhood. Do we have to have it in a rental property in the neighborhood? What are we doing to that neighborhood in the future? You know, I think it all comes down to the property and the neighborhood, not the people, not the care, not the need that's out there. It is what is going to happen to the neighborhood. We don't know. You're saying this is the first time. Maybe we need to take an extra look at this being the first time. Has other neighborhoods been looked at? Has other communities done this and what has been their issues? That's what we're asking, I think, as neighbors, is to take time, please, and take a good look at what the property and what's going to happen to the property and to the homeowners that you are now making a decision that'll affect them. Thank you.
Did I say that right? Where? Eight oh five North 98th Street. Paula Reeves? No. Thank you. Carter Summer?
Carter Sumner, 27K Street, Jenks. And the only thing I have to say is that I understand the need. Please understand the need of the homeowners, their neighbors. And if there's rules and regulations that are attached to this, which means it won't interfere with their convenience of the street, there will be parking issues. That's a small street. And we're not familiar with this kind of an operation. So I think there needs to be some more level of understanding and supply. That's it. Thank you.
Stella Sumner? Thomas Reste?
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Thomas Uresti, and I live at 1007 North Fur. And when my wife and I and our two children moved from Kansas City, Missouri to Tulsa, we asked an apartment locator what was the best school system. And it's at Jenks. I said, well, that's where we want to be. and we've lived in our house for the last 45 years. The realtor said this is a nice community, and it was, and we'd like to keep it that way. And my heart goes out to the families that have these children. And I know there are other places that provide the service for them. And our good friend Gail White that just spoke, she has a child with special needs, and she does a wonderful job for her child. And we like to keep, even though I'm not next door to this house, but on K, there's a lot of young families that are moving into our neighborhood that walk their children to to Ivy Place to wait for the bus every morning at 7:30. They walk there in the morning and they walk back to school. I don't know if that's gonna create a problem or not. But may I ask you one question? Are y'all voting on this tonight?
It is under consideration for a vote.
I think you need to take more time and find more facts about this. And my heart goes out to the young lady that just spoke that her son Will passed away. But I'm looking at our value of our property for all of us that live in Jenks. And I just hope that you can take this in consideration. And like I said, my heart goes out to all these families that have special need kids. And when my kids call us to take care of their kids, we call it babysitting. We don't call it rescue, we call it babysitting. Thank you.
Thank you. John and Nancy Jones. Thank you. Jeremy Warren.
My name is Jeremy Warren. I live at 8224 South Louisville Avenue, Tulsa, Oklahoma. We're in Jenks Public School District. I'm here tonight on behalf of Jeanette and Will's House. I am the executive director for a men's ministry called Dads on Special Assignment. We are a men's ministry dedicated to the health and well-being of dads that have children with special needs. I spend and have committed my adult life to spending time with men who are raising children and have families with special needs and get to meet with them one-on-one, along with support groups and various other entities that serve these families directly. My wife and I have 5 boys. We've been married for 18 years. Our second oldest son is 12, who is nonverbal and in a wheelchair and requires extensive care all day. He's unable to communicate or express his need if he was injured, so he can never be left alone. The reason I'm here tonight is because my son and my family will be a direct recipient of what Will's House has to offer, and I can speak on behalf of the men that I spend time with each day and each week that will also be direct recipients of what Will's House has to offer in the way that they care for the child. I understand that much of what's been shared tonight is very emotional and that the matter at hand is the property. I hope that Jeanette's opening statement can be shared and made public so that everyone can hear her heart and know exactly what the expectation will be on behalf of Will's House. I think she's made it very clear that she will work directly with you side by side in making sure that it maintains the value that Jenks has made available to all of its citizens. I know that there will not be extensive use of the property outside the manner in which has been expressed already, and I know that it's important to understand that it's my understanding that nothing will be directly done or altered on the property to decrease the value of the neighborhood or any of those that are be directly affected by the neighborhood. I know that they desire to serve families, which each one of us are called to do, that choose to follow Christ. I know that Jeanette has made it clear to those that she is in direct contact with, and I've known her for years to know her intent and her heart behind this issue. I simply want to make mention that when a person purchases a property or rents a property, there is not a hearing that's held to interview the person that will take residence in that property. And I think it's important to understand that the use of this property will not be anything outside of the use that would be done by a resident that would own or rent that property. I know there's much concern that surrounds the way the property will be used, and I can speak on behalf of my own family and for many that you've heard from already tonight that these children or these young adults that have been mentioned are not abusive or dangerous to our society, and they simply love and enjoy being around others. I appreciate your guys' consideration. I'm thankful that there has already been a recommendation made by Jenks. I know that this is an opportunity for Jenks to be put on the map for the way that they will respond to this very issue. I know while this single issue will not change the trajectory of what Jenks stands for, but I believe that it will play a valuable part in what Jenks can and will stand for as a community moving forward. And I just want to say on behalf of Jeanette, 1 Peter 4:10 says that each one has been given a special gift. We must employ to serve one another as good stewards in the manifold grace of God. Jeanette has made this clear that she desires to be a good steward of the gift that God has clearly shown her. And we all must be able to extend grace as we have all been given and shown grace by the one who created and is the sustainer of all life. Thank you.
We're approaching hours. We have a couple more that have signed up to speak. After we give them a chance to speak, we'll take a small 5-10 minute break, and then we will resume the next person to speak, Lisa Skipper Bain.
We signed it. We just signed it.
Thank you.
But we're supporting. You want to say something? Oh, okay.
My name is Skipper Bain. I live at 9447 77th Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've been working, still working with the city of Tulsa for 43 years, so I do understand the Board of Adjustments, understand the city council, how important your decisions are, how much research you do, and Ms. Hilton, I appreciate the research you've done on this. You spoke. And I just want to say that I'm in favor of Will's House. Our wife, Lisa, has a nonprofit, so I understand about nonprofits. And so Will's House is a nonprofit. They're going to have to follow certain rules and regulations. We know that if it's a home-based child business or child care, they've got to follow certain rules and regulations and policies at DHS. So there's a lot of rules and policies in place for home-based businesses, as I understand it. Anywhere in the city of Tulsa, I'm not sure about Jenks, you can have a home-based business, and you have certain rules you have to follow for a home-based business. And that it appears that whatever home-based business that be, if there was an issue in the residence neighborhood, that those residents would have the opportunity to call that out, whether it's an ordinance or noise or traffic problems. They would again address that issue if there were any issues. Let's see if there's going to be any issues first before we put it down. Let's see what it turns out to be. I think Jenks, which also do the same thing, Jenks does have a good opportunity for this to happen, to occur. And I just want to say thank you for your jobs and your decision making. I know it's a hard decision. Thank you for research, and thank you very much again. I'm supportive of Will's House. Thank you.
Phyllis Hill.
Phyllis Hill, and I live at 912 North Juniper, a block over behind them. And I think what they're doing is wonderful. I really do. And I think it's very neat, all over everywhere. But, I moved to Jenks in 1963, me and my husband, and we lived there till about 1987. And we wanted a bigger house and a little property. And so, we chose to move out on 121st and Quanah, that's right, about 3 blocks off the bypass, right out there by the Walmart. And, we loved it out there. I had a bigger house, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. I mean, that's what I wanted, 2 people. I mean, duh, you know. And, we loved it, and he had his 2.5 acres. But when my husband passed away in 2002, I was always told if you're a widow, stay there for a while. Don't just move out instantly. So I chose to stay there for several more years. Then I lived with my son for just a little bit. And then I moved, to 912 North Juniper Street. That's where I live now. But when I first moved to Jenks, I lived right down there on Ivy. I live right on the corner of Ivy. That has been a wonderful addition. We love it. And so the house that I moved from would be a perfect place. You know, I mean, a lot of room, a lot of houses. I mean, it's going to come available pretty soon for sale at a real reasonable price. And so I think that would be an excellent place for them because my heart goes out to them. But as homeowners, and a homeowner there, and I back up the golf course, I just live right off from them. I mean, some of the people are living right next to them. And so I think we have to stand up for our rights, and they have to too. I think they need a more spacious place. And where I moved from has a great big parking area, be perfect for them. I'll put them in touch with them. But it sounds like she's renting sort of a renter instead of an owner. And so I think we have to love everybody. We have to love everybody in our addition that works so hard for our homes. And then we have to love them because they definitely need a wonderful place for these children that need to be taken care of. So I think it would not be too good for our addition. And if we don't protect our additions, how many more additions in Jenks sometimes might come up the same thing. So I just say God bless them, and I hope they find the right place, you know, for these dear children because they deserve a good place. But I think it sounds more, to me, a little bit more commercially than in a home residence. Thank you.
Thank you for having me this evening. This is a big topic. This is not something I can see a vote going on tonight. I can have no way see that going on tonight. There are so many questions just reading through this. Do I have a clicker for this? I saw some frowns. I know that on page 2, it talks about 6 people maximum at one time. On page 4, it mentions 7. It is, by the time you read through that, and even quickly, the paragraph down here in the bottom, it has no commas. You can't even do it in one breath. But what it does have is it has the word foster about 9 times. So I'm not sure why foster is so key in that statement. That's a law. We have got to understand this. How many people in here live in the neighborhood? We have a lot of Tulsans here. Tulsa, they have their own city council. Tulsa has their own city council.
Sir.
Okay. So, I would like to ask that on your website, it says nothing about this. It's hard to learn about. I represent homeowners, not just in Jenks, but in Oklahoma. They represent something very special too, very good need, but it's small in comparison to what I represent. This is a precedent that will be set, and it's a big deal. I would like for you to think about that, and somebody asked if we can have another meeting. I wouldn't mind bringing some counsel of my own in and talking to your counsel. But I think this is a big deal. Please, please think about how big this is. Thank you.
Last person on our list, Paige Jones. Emily. I see it as 8 o'clock, it's been 2 hours. We'll start again in 5 minutes, 8:05.
They have
being here. Thank you all to those who have spoken. We do want to give the applicant an opportunity to respond to questions and comments that were raised during this public hearing. If you like. And we may have questions for you at the end.
Sure. Okay. I was thinking, in some ways, this is not what I was prepared for, and in other ways it was. I was expecting concerns about parking and also about the model. And like I said, it's a new model. It doesn't exist. One struggle that I have is that I often feel like quitting what I'm doing because it just is so small for what the need is. I'm only able to correctly, based on the quality of care and the type of population that I serve, I can only serve maybe 0.05 of the need that we have. And that makes me really sad. I'm like, I didn't go big enough, you know? But what I did do was try to make a small community-based model within the community that I also grew up in and love and know, that my family who has disabilities also lives within this community. I tried to make something small that was so loving and safe and showed a different way that could be replicated moving forward. I will say that my real estate agent and I looked for properties for 2 years. We looked at all kinds of properties. We looked at anything that can be used in a creative way that could be a home type environment, like a church or a property with land or a commercial building that could be turned into a home type of environment. We looked at everything. But the fact of the matter is, we want a residential space because that allows us to provide overnight care and longer term care. The same as like when you have a newborn and you try to decide if you're going to stay home for child care, if you're gonna have a family member watch your child, if you're gonna do home child care or daycare. You look at all your options. For us, there are no options in any aspect of child care or overnight care. So for us to make one house within our community that can be used that way, if my father-in-law passed away in Virginia, I cannot travel with my children to go to that funeral. I instantly have a need for childcare. And if I have this relationship, it keeps my child from having to travel and go to an institution to be watched so that I can go to this funeral. It is one location within a community that is to be used as a house to support this need. Also, nonprofit organizations buy houses and utilize houses in a much bigger scope than what I am doing. They do have occupants. There are group homes. There are recovery homes all over Tulsa and Jinx, nonprofits. My good friend runs Martha's Foundation, which is a house at Tulsa Hills. It is a residence, and she is a nonprofit, and she functions from a house. That is what I'm asking for this population, a home. If I pursued another type of building somewhere else, I would have the same issue to sell overnight respite care because it doesn't exist. This week, my schedule includes watching a child through the weekend at my own home. He will be dropped off. He will stay at my home. No one will even know he's there, and he will leave. On Tuesday night, I am watching 5 children in their home. On Wednesday, I'm watching 3 children from 9 to 2 in my own home. This week, and any given week, that house will be clean and sitting empty and quiet. But if I needed it because someone had a challenge or an emergency, then it would be prepared and I could customize that space based on the need. I understand the licensures and the insurance and the requirements that are necessary to do this because this is what I do for a living. And I'm studying respite so that it can be better in Oklahoma. So I am responsible for the safety of the quality of care of the children I'm providing. If I was doing it in my own home, which I am, no one is getting to come in and scrutinize everything about, I care for my own children in a home in Jinx. And we have, just as Megan said, there's cars parked, we have teenagers. We are open to restricting the amount of cars that can be at the residence. There's no reason for there to be any, and as I said earlier, organizational growth for us does not look like more and more people occupying that house. That is not the plan at all. And I understand there are going to be questions, it is a new model, but if you don't do it, as I said, we're asking for such a small thing to have one home option in all of Oklahoma. And if we can't even get that far, I've made it farther than anyone else in this process. And it's quite honestly very overwhelming. It is very hurtful at times. And I'm trying to make some other option for us within a community. I do believe that we have the right to be using the home in this way. It's no different than how we utilize our own homes. It's just a house. It will look like a house. It will act like a house. They can call if there's a problem. We are open to all of those things. We have never said that we weren't open to those things. I don't know how else to say it. I feel like I've been truthful, and honestly, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of support, and I really, really hope that the people who have stood before you that have been vulnerable about their personal experiences, that you will just hold that and honor that, and even if you just take it with you as you go home tonight and think about the differences between the options they've been given versus the options typical children are given. Our ask is actually very small, and we are open to figuring it out as we go. We really are. So if you have any other specific questions, I am in a lease purchase agreement with the owner, and the contract looks like an ownership agreement because he was making allowances for us to adapt the house as we're purchasing it. I have the right to purchase it at any time. It is not a set, I can purchase it tomorrow from him. It is a lease purchase agreement. It is in the name of Will's house and not me as an individual. That is, I will be honest about any aspect of my business and my life.
I do have a few brief questions. You mentioned lease purchase. Just to be clear, the current owner is
Mr. Rudy Froshley. He's what?
Have they authorized any application?
Yes, so, yes, and he, actually, in searching for a home, we were turned away by many properties, based on our clientele. It was nearly impossible to rent any properties, and sometimes when we attempted to enter into lease purchase agreements, we were also turned away on those properties based on our clients. And Mr. Froshley made a deliberate decision to choose us over other possible renters and tenants because he believed in our vision, and he also believed that the neighborhood would be supportive of his decision to do that.
And the lease purchase, does that mean that in time that you would be purchasing property?
We would purchase it in the name of the nonprofit.
Thank you. Now, I've heard the term business being used. Do you accept compensation for childcare, or is this donation-based?
It is donation-based, and we can utilize the respite vouchers that are given by the state of Oklahoma if people have them. But our service is a nonprofit charity. Yes.
Any licensing required through the state and or city? Are those in process?
Yes, they have to be in process. The child care licensure would be based on how we want to license the house. There's multiple types of that. We've decided because we haven't opened the home, like we would have to have that in place. And then for respite care, there is no specific licensure. A respite provider just needs to be over 18 and have a social security number. Which is very odd, but again, there's questions because this doesn't really typically exist.
Can we get a traffic study?
We will allow additional public speaking after the applicant has had their chance to speak. How many total caregivers do you anticipate initially at this facility, if it is?
Sure, I am the primary caregiver. And I would be doing the volunteer training that is in, under the standards of the National Respite Network. They have a set of volunteer training for respite centers, and I would hope to have about 5 people go through the first training. But what that looks like is I would utilize them based on, we customize the care. So like if a child came that was 2 years old that needed more medical care or something like that, and I needed 2 people, or I needed a more medical volunteer, then I would pull my more medical volunteer, and we would have a ratio of 2 to 1 for that child if we needed it. Or if my friend Megan that spoke, she's a behavioral para at the school and trained in trauma behaviors and things like that. So if I was going to watch a child, I would assess what that child would need to be safe and be cared for appropriately, and I would have my volunteer come to assist me in the caregiving. But for most of it, I don't need an additional caregiver. Or my husband is also background checked, and because we watch children in our home, he's not a staff, but has gone through all of the credentialing for a volunteer because he's an adult that's around children, right?
Last question that I have, do you see this, if it is to be approved at this facility, do you see growth potential? Do you have a plan for if you are to have more demand for your services than can be reasonably accommodated at this facility?
Yes. So one of the standards of the National Respite Network is that we can complete a needs assessment. And so what that looks like is, like I said, when a family tells us what they need, say we have an overwhelming need for aftercare. That's not something we can provide at the house, correct? So that would be too many people that need this aftercare time, or buses, or whatever. So if that becomes the primary data that we're getting as we're meeting families, then we would look to grow by having a place that could be a storefront or a building that's separate that provides aftercare. That would be growth, but that would not be at the house. Or if we find that we're serving young adults primarily that need overnight care, and our data is driving that way, then we would find another space that could provide the overnight care. But because of the vulnerability of our population and what we deem to be safe, it does not look like growth of the number of people at that house. It wouldn't be like I'm taking care of 6 dependent people for 2 weeks. It would never look like that. It would be very much on a small scale. Yeah.
I said that was my last question, but
It's okay.
question. So how many children would you have at any one time?
Right. So the only way that we, again, we are not a daycare, but the only reference that we have for that is the way a small home that would be equivalent to the size of this home would be licensed. Were I the resident of the home and I wanted to start a home daycare, they would limit me to 7 children. And then within that, it's 6 or 7, depending on the ages of the children. But I don't like to use that because that isn't typically how my model of childcare works. Because I base that ratio on the needs, the medical needs of the children.
Would there be any over 18 population at this facility?
Yes, and so like my friend Elijah is over 18, and he has the same needs, and so yes, we do serve young adults, and it is very blurry as to the rules of caring for young adults, except that the child care licensure prohibits me from treating adults at the same time as children, but that wouldn't happen in my model anyway because I work with one person at a time, essentially.
Do the other board members have questions?
I got a question. I got a couple questions.
Okay.
First of all, are you currently licensed?
I am not. I have a physical therapy license.
But
My home is not licensed for childcare because I am under the requirements for having to be licensed. There's hours that, I don't provide enough hours within a week to have to license my home because I was looking for the home that I would license.
Second question, your current home,
Yes.
you haven't taken through this process, but you're operating the same thing, right?
Right, but under the hours that are, that would have to have a childcare license.
I mean, technically in the city of Jenks, if you're going to have a daycare facility in your home.
I do not run a daycare facility in my home. I watch people's children, and it classifies as respite care to use the vouchers, and in order for me to do that, I have to be 18 and have a social security number. It's just an informal arrangement with people. They say, can you watch my kid? It's the same as babysitting until it goes to a certain amount of hours, and then I would have to license my home. But because I work with adults and children, and in such a small scale, I do not run a full-time daycare at all.
Marseille, can you help me out there with because we're kind of running this as a daycare kind of situation, is what we're running it under.
Correct.
So,
But she's opened her home up, from what I understand, from what I have understood leading up to this hearing. She is not operating a childcare service out of her home. What she has done is said, let me know if you're in a pinch and you can bring your child over.
Right. I need to license the home that I'm using for my nonprofit as would carry the childcare licensure, if they deem that what we're doing meets the criteria to be licensed, which it might honestly still fall under the hours that, because they do not offer full-time care, and there are different requirements for drop-in care versus a small family. I don't know how they will license me because I haven't started that process with this home, with this model.
I would say what she does now is no different than me taking all 9 grandchildren at one time. Yeah. It's the same.
You confirm that at the property at issue, you don't currently reside there, correct?
Right.
Do you have any intention of residing there
I do not.
in the future?
No. I would just be staying there as the caregiver if someone were staying overnight.
So if someone were staying overnight, then you would be present at all times?
Yes. It's overnight childcare.
How often do you see the circumstance arise in which you'd be staying overnight at the facility, at that property?
I don't know. I don't know exactly how often that would be. I'm not sure exactly how many times we've provided overnight care separate from regular child care. I would say probably 3 or 4 jobs this year have been overnight jobs, which like Mr. Wiggins, I know that was like 2 nights, anywhere from 2, in January we had a child for 10 days for respite care. But those are not our primary needs. It's more drop-in care, like going to appointments, things like that.
Any other questions from board members?
I have a couple of questions. So as part of our roles and responsibilities is to follow the UDO. That just was just taken a few weeks back. So on, just for the board members, page 8 of 8 of the packet, or page 16 of 39 of the total packet, there's 5 items listed. I guess I need clarification on number 2 and 3. Number 2 is the primary use of this lot shall be residential in nature. And number 3, no person other than a resident of the dwelling unit shall be engaged or employed in the home-based childcare on the premises. I guess you need a little bit more clarification on those and how it applies to this case.
I can answer in regards to number 2, when it says the primary use of the lot shall be residential in nature. So it's not going to be a tire shop. It's not going to be a food truck court. It's not going to be a multifamily residence. This is a house that looks like a house and functions as a house. So it is and will be, and will remain residential in nature. And then number 3, no person other than the resident of the dwelling unit shall be engaged or employed in the home-based childcare on the premises. I think you would have to discern if you think that volunteers would equal engaged, and if you do deem that as the board, then you would, she would need to come back for a variance. And for that, I apologize, I should have thought through that, and I did not.
I understand.
Okay,
Thank you both. I did also have the same concern specific to the definition of a home-based child care and the specific use restrictions that are attached to them. Being engaged or employed at the facility, restricted to people who reside there, that does seem to be a disqualification if it were not relieved through the variance process outlined in the UDO. So I believe, and others may share or may not, the board has jurisdiction, and the only thing before us for consideration is the use and all of the restrictions that go along with that. So if the board were inclined to approve it, we can only approve what's allowed under code. So, in my opinion, the board may feel differently. That particular use element, the restriction that the only people who are engaged or employed at the facility must be residents of the dwelling, would require a separate application.
Okay.
No process.
Okay. Understand.
My only concern also is the resident of the property is also Wilson's. And so my also interpretation of this could go both ways. I'm a little on the fence with agreeing with you. I also have the initial concern of number 2 and 3, wondering if we, number 1, had jurisdiction to even hear this case, or if we should push it off to allow the applicant to continue with the variance. And have us come back. We would also give everyone an opportunity to potentially gather more information or gather more facts so that they can make more well-informed decisions. So that we as a board members can also hear additional comments once they've received those communications and information. However, the term resident doesn't appear to be defined in the UDO. The term home-based childcare is defined. Unfortunately, it appears to be a typo. It doesn't appear to be well defined. But the word resident is not. And so what I'm speaking out loud or thinking out loud about is, given the fact that the resident legally is Will's house, whether that variance on number 3 would be required. However, I do agree that item number 2 does raise a concern that would preclude us, in my opinion, from continuing on with the vote until a variance is sought.
So is that something we table? And I mean, what action do we actually take then? Because I agree with both of you. That was my same concerns.
I mean, could we actually table this and allow the applicant to seek a variance and essentially not take a vote on this and allow the hearing 30-day hearing opportunity so that that way we don't have to accept or decline this exception?
The notice for variance is 10 days. So it's just a letter that has to go out. So anytime from the time the letter is mailed, you have 10 days to, you have to wait 10 days from that point to have a second hearing. And I would say you could very well just recommend withdrawing the application and not taking action on it.
Can you apply for a variance if you don't own the property?
You can.
Just a suggestion. I too have a little bit of concern. There are a lot of moving parts here, and this is a new use. It doesn't really neatly fit into any box that's been created by the code. I do have a little bit of concern going forward with the vote tonight. One thing that occurs to me, there's a lot of support here for the concept. There are also a lot of neighbors here who are very concerned and are not in support. Have you had a chance to visit with the immediate neighbors to talk about?
I have with some, yes, I have a relationship with the neighbors directly across both sides. What I had hoped would be possible, I wanted people to have my actual information. I know when there were questions that came into the city, Mr. Macy tried to route people directly to me. I offered to answer those directly myself. I would be happy, it was very quickly combative, and so I was nervous to, the house is open, anyone can look at it, it looks like a house, and I want to be there with the neighbors, but because of some things that were a little bit threatening, that were anonymous, I didn't know who was safe to approach or not. And so I wish that it had been different, and I would hope that as neighbors, I really enjoy the neighborhood for all the reasons that they do, that it's quiet. The other day when I was there with my son, everyone had their garage doors open, and everybody is kind of out and about, and so are me and my son, and it was quiet, and it was peaceful, and I really want that for my clients. And I would want to be a part of, I own a nonprofit, like we can do fun things for holidays, we can do community-based things, that's what I envisioned for it, but when there was the element of anonymous challenges, the letter that was distributed and things like that, I did not feel comfortable moving out of the space of my home. So if people were coming to me with questions, I felt totally comfortable with that. I did not feel comfortable venturing too far from the property myself.
A lot of concerns were raised here. If we were to continue this to a later date, perhaps to allow for variance, part of it to go on the same agenda and be considered at the same time, would you be willing to work with staff to outline certain restrictions, parameters that
Sure.
you feel could help
Sure.
mitigate some of the concerns of your neighbors?
Yes, absolutely. There already had been some about the number of cars and things like that that we had passed back and forth, and yes, we're definitely open to that.
The board can approve it, if it is to approve, does have the ability to attach conditions to that approval. And if you were to work those out with staff, I think we could focus more on the details and filter out some of the things that aren't really relevant.
I understand, that sounds great. Yes.
Any regular board meeting? Is there a time urgency attached to this?
No.
We'll have a regular meeting in June, and I think that would allow variance notice to go through, and everything could be in sync at that time.
Okay. Is that communication just Ms. Sultan letting me know what you need before that meeting?
Would be, the board would need to tell you specifically what they are looking for tonight, moving forward. And I would say a couple of things that I did not touch on as a staff before we close. This, the variance goes with the request, not with the property. So if Will's house ceased to operate at that location, it is not transferable. So another good idea who wants to do something similar but maybe wouldn't have the integrity and character of the O'Haras would not be able to come in willy-nilly. They would have to go through the same process. It's not a rezoning, so the property does not get rezoned. It is a residential use. It stays a residential use. It is not uncommon to allow for home-based businesses or home-based childcare. And all the emotion aside, because we absolutely, positively cannot and will not, as a municipality, discriminate, period. So all the emotion aside, if it fits within the best fit that we can make it within our code, then that's what their decision will be made on, and my recommendation will be made on. And it cannot become a halfway house or any of those things. There was a flyer that went out that was full of misinformation and a lot of fear, provoked a lot of fear, and I think it's very disappointing and very discouraging and, it's not factual. You can't do those things. Halfway house requires a 30-day notice, and everyone within a quarter of a mile gets a notice. A use such as a childcare, which is the closest thing that I could find, requires a 10-day notice, and everyone within 300 feet. That's because state statute says it's a big deal if a halfway house comes to your neighborhood. It's not as big a deal if someone puts a home-based childcare in their home and uses it for that. So, just so that everyone is clear, this is not a rezoning. This is a residential property. It stays a residential property. Taxes are based on uses. This is used as a house with a childcare in it. It has a kitchen. You're not gutting it out and taking the kitchen out. It's a house. It has a bathroom with a shower. It has toilets. It has running water. It has beds. It is a residential use. It just happens that nobody lives there every day and every night.
Can they use
It's
that
still,
100%?
I would appreciate if you did not speak from the audience.
100%.
I would appreciate if you did not speak from the audience. The other items, they do not have to take action tonight, but they do have to explain, and they know that. The board is very competent, and I have the greatest respect for them. But the application, they can suggest that it be withdrawn, and that would be your decision at the end of the day. If you do not withdraw the application tonight, then you would have to take action on it. You could continue. So those are some of the options that could take place. If you want to seek a variance, and it sounds like that is the direction that the board is going, then they will need to direct you, and I think they've given you some really good feedback, but they may need to articulate it with a motion.
And so again, we as a board can continue
Yes.
on our own volition.
Yes.
With the understanding that a variance at a later point can attach to this original application.
Well, may I make a correction? Sorry to interrupt. It would be, should make a new application. I would have her to submit a new application for a variance.
Understood.
Same.
But again, you're saying if we were to guide her that way, we either have an option to withdraw the application or table it until the variance was sought. Is that, did I understand that correctly?
If, that's kind of what was said, but it's not 100% accurate. She can withdraw the application and no action is required from the board. You can continue the application, but at the next hearing, because we advertised for a special exception, you can only have a special exception hearing. I have to do a new advertisement for a variance. So continuing it would only be wise if you see that you can, could possibly give her a special exception. If you do not think you can, then I do not see any point in continuing it. You would need to ask her to come back with an application for a variance. You can continue it, I just don't know if there would be any point. If you don't think that she can have a special exception. Does that make sense?
Marcy, just clarification, she would need both a special exception and variance, correct? She would need a special exception for, yeah, she'd need a special exception for the childcare and then the variance for the childcare requirements.
So again, in other words, she already has a special exemption application. Would she have to refile that in addition to a new variance, or can we just keep the special exemption on file? I don't know if maybe there's a permit to.
You can continue that.
So she would just need to file it, just need to file for a variance to the extent we were to continue.
Okay, that's good.
Sorry.
Do you know the date of the June meeting?
Okay, let me say that to the public. So the question tonight is the best fit that staff could find for a respite care was a child care facility. And the licensing and all of the disposal of hazardous materials, if there are any, all of that comes through state regulation. The city is not going to ever check about hazardous disposal, etc. That's all state regulation. So the question tonight is, does this fit within a home-based childcare? And we talked a little bit about the difference of that, because a home-based childcare is not people dropping their children off. It's not the same. There's hours, etc. So she would still need, and this is what Mr. Pittman was clarifying, and I wasn't on the same page. Thank you, Brandon. So she still needs a special exception for that childcare. However, she may not be able to meet the requirement, or she may not want to. Number 3, no person other than a resident of the dwelling unit shall be engaged or employed. Mr. Spencer has argued that perhaps that is not necessary for a variance, because if Will's House is the owner, then anyone who works for Will's House would be allowed to work there. Is that your argument?
That's
and then the other one is the question of the primary use of the lot shall be residential in nature. And part of the responsibility, so I believe that the board is suggesting that those two would require a variance, possibly.
correct.
And the board, it is the responsibility of the board to interpret the zoning code. So between now and then, I would be required to provide additional information, definitions, and you all would need to decide, does this fit within the definition and is it acceptable? There's my.
There's none.
Do we have any further discussion?
Just, I have one more piece of information. To the extent the board were to consider this at the next available meeting for a special exemption and a variance, I particularly as a board member would like to see particularly a set hours of operation. I'd like to see some plan for parking, some type of age restriction, and maybe some potential security operation, or maybe some delineation as to how security would be enforced. I wanted to add that in.
To be clear, are you okay with this continuing?
Yes.
That date
Oh, I
again?
didn't look it up.
It's June 16th.
Thanks.
June 16th. So to preserve the public hearing that has been publicly advertised, we do need to continue to a date certain. Adding to the comment made earlier, if the board does not feel that at that future date they could support even the special exception today, then I suppose a vote on a motion to continue, you would vote no. Just a suggestion. This is not prejudging your ultimate outcome, but if you are in support of additional information, as I'm suggesting, I think a lot of us are suggesting, then vote to approve a motion to continue the meeting. So I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Excuse me, what about us getting a chance to ask additional questions?
At the next meeting,
No, you said tonight.
at the next meeting, we will have another public hearing and everybody will speak.
You said tonight we could follow up with additional questions. Exactly what you said before she got up to speak. You said we would have a chance to continue to ask some more questions. And I've got a list of them right now. And I want you to take them so that she can answer them.
It is up to this board whether or not we want to continue to take comments that we're not ready to vote on yet today. We have a motion on the table to continue this to date certain. There will be a public hearing. Anybody who signs up to speak will be given an opportunity at that time to speak.
Point of order. Are we allowed to continue a hearing for the Board of Adjustment anytime if the board decides to vote on it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I second the motion.
Please.
Patel?
Yes.
Foley?
No.
Pittman?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Inyard?
Yes. Thank you all for your time. That date again was
June 16th.
June 16th. We'll be back in this room 6 p.m. for additional very last item on the agenda is adjournment. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Patel?
Yes.
Foley?
Yes.
Pittman?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Aaron? Yes. Thank you all.